Interview Process. This is a podcast that discusses life and business topics where we ask a lot of questions, tell a whole lot of stories, so that all of our viewers can achieve their desired outcomes. Today's episode and the entire show is sponsored by Benegas Art. David Benegas is a good friend of mine and turns photography into beautiful Benegas art. You can use the FYP 5 off code for 5% off at benegasartmerch.com. And I encourage you, if you have a photograph that you would like to be transformed into Benegas art, go ahead and send that to David, mention the show, and he'll take off 5% of your first purchase. I'm excited today. On today's episode, we have Rose Lathrop from Bellingham, Washington, and Sustainable Connections. I met Rose last week when I was traveling up in Bellingham to see 2020 Engineering and some others. And I was just utterly impressed by what Sustainable Connections is doing, and then obviously Rose and her involvement. And to get us started, I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to watch a brief 5-minute video and then come back to Rose for our discussion. So sharing the screen.
Washington.
We are about an hour from Canada right now, and we are highlighting Sustainable Connections, which is an incredible nonprofit.
Bellingham is one of the most sustainable communities in the U.S. It has an amazing local living economy, and the locals are incredible. Lots of social entrepreneurs, so we're going to go and interview them.
About 50% of your dollar stays within your community if you're buying from a local retailer or purveyor, because their business owners spend that money locally. Whereas if you're part of a chain, that dollar that you give to that business owner, or that $50 goes outside of the community, goes up to headquarters, goes up to an organization that doesn't know how our community works. Local bookstore owners here, and fishermen and farmers and brewers who take that dollar and reinvest it right back in the community. This is why Bellingham is one of these cities that is sustaining ourselves in a sort of a kind of a down economy right now.
So for me, it's going down to the farmer's market. I know the farms there. I know who's growing my food.
Everything that I possibly can source, I source within 22 miles. It tastes better, it's better for you, and it's better for the local economy. And I love to support the local farmers because they are hard-working people, really hard-working people. I have a lot of friends who are farmers, and I just trade my cookies for their vegetables, and I just kind of like that whole mentality, and that works.
In the summer, we do basil and mint. And within the basil and mint, it is still grown from the fields when it comes in.
We get a lot of the trees that we work with from that forest right there. So he'll cut them, and he'll bring them right here. I mean, it's a quarter mile away. Our programs aren't successful until they actually are emulated by these businesses. Like, this is a local bakery. We just passed by a local burger joint that sources local salmon out of Bellingham Bay. They source from local cows. You guys were eating at the pizza shop the other day, and I mean, these are zero waste businesses. I mean, we can't teach this stuff unless makes economic sense for the business owner. And then if it does, they're going to teach their employees how that happens. And it's that simple, I think.
I love this community. It's amazing. It's absolutely incredible. It's the reason I've stayed as long as I have.
I love it. The first time I ever crossed into Washington from Astoria, you know that bridge? I had this pang. I'm like, oh my God, I'm home. This is freaking awesome.
You talk to anyone that lives in Bellingham, it's like, we don't live here because we make lots of money.
I like Bellingham. I like it here.
I like this town.
It's pretty awesome. It's really fun just like riding around town and seeing bikes everywhere that you built for people.
It's a great community. I mean, it's in my opinion, it's paradise. It's pretty hard to beat it.
Well, that was a great video, Rose. And welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Hours drive from Vancouver is Bellingham, and my sisters and I, perfect weekend getaway.
We're in Bellingham, and we're at the Boulevard Park.
Established in the 1980s with a beautiful view of the bay, is a perfect.
Well, this is why I'm not a producer and experience technical difficulty every once in a while. But anyway, that is over with now. But welcome to the show, Rose. And it's great to have you on. And it was great to meet you last week up in Bellingham.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a good time.
Yes. We got to sit out on the deck there by the harbor with a couple of your friends and my friends and chit chat. And that's where I learned about what you're doing at Sustainable Connections. And I'd like you to tell the audience a little bit more. You're the Green Building and Energy Program Director. So maybe just tell us a little bit about what you do over there and a little bit more broadly about Sustainable Connections.
Sure. Well, I love that you started with that video because, I recognize so many of those business owners in there as still thriving business owners, even though that video is quite a few years old. And it really resonates true. It like warms your heart to think about the level of effort that our community has put into creating that local living economy. So Sustainable Connections, I'll start with just kind of who we are and how we got our start. And it really got started with the Think Local First and, developing local lovers. And so in 2001, we started the Think Local First program. So it was just reaching out to a lot of the business owners. We saw there was leadership among our business owners already. There was people that were considering zero waste, and there was people that were doing a lot of that local purchasing and care for the community. And what we wanted to do was really to help identify for the public who is local, and so that they could understand where to drive their dollars. So we started our Think Local First campaign. That's how we got our start. And it didn't take too long before we were up to 500 members. Everybody just really interested to kind of buy into this idea where not only were they getting promoted to the public about being local, but then also they're getting resources and technical assistance and support to help further their sustainability in other ways. And so as the program started to grow and as Sustainable Connections grew, we started to bring on different programs. And so, food and farming became a very clear next step as we were thinking about how we grow our local economy, and our food economy is a really critical piece to that. So we have a very robust food and farming program that works with new incoming farmers that are interested and thinking about farming, to farmers that are just getting started. So we have an incubator program we call the Food to Bank On program. We support them through a business development while they're growing vegetables that then gets purchased by the food bank. And so they're getting a chance to figure out their business plan with the support of knowing that their product will get purchased. We work with everyone, restaurateurs, farmers, food producers, everyone along the chain, really trying to create those ties so that everyone can connect and meet with each other. So we have a farm trade meeting each year where we generate out of that meeting alone like $1.5 million in farm sales a year. So these are some really exciting things that we can do and really pushing public education while also working with businesses. We also have our Green Building and Smart Growth program. And so this program really started when we were seeing a lot of really rapid growth without as much care. And so not only did we want to support, a sustainable living built environment, but also helping educate the architects and the builders and the contractors, the developers, so that they know how to do the things more sustainably. And so we started doing lead education for all of our members in that field. So we have technical assistance, we do market development, so helping customers and clients understand where they can go to find people that can do that good work. And then over the years, our Smart Growth program has developed, and we are now have the Whatcom Housing Alliance, which is an alliance of 36 different organizations, all in Whatcom County, dedicated to creating more housing choices and options so we can improve affordability, public health, the local economic development. There's just a lot that goes around that surrounds housing. And so we thought this is an opportunity for us to find those shared goals and move housing forward also.
So let me ask you, how is Sustainable Connections funded for you all to have such a big staff and to be able to do everything that you do? Because without that funding and without that organization it's a nonprofit, obviously, but how is it that you all receive your funding?
Yeah, we have a very diverse funding model. So we do have a membership. So businesses contribute a membership fee. We do sponsorships, and those are like really great sources of funding because it's really discretionary. So that's where we can be innovative and creative when trying to do new things. A lot of times, grant funding and contract funding, limits you in what you can do. So, but we do have quite a bit of grants, contracts, foundational support. Yeah, it's quite, because we have such a diverse program, we have very diverse funding sources. So it takes all of it.
How big has it grown to? Like, what is if it's public knowledge only, but what is an annual budget for Sustainable Connections at this point?
Sure. Well, just in the last year and a half, we have merged with another nonprofit, Cloud Mountain Farm Center. This is another part of our, kind of growing the local food economy and really trying to figure out how we can support farmers in the best way possible and the public. So we merged with another nonprofit, and so that essentially doubled our $2.5 million budget.
Wow.
And we have a staff of 15 in our Bellingham office, and it depends on the season, obviously, at the farm, but they're upwards around 15 over there as well.
Yeah, and maybe give an example of how you work with Mark Brewer at 2020 Engineering. I know he mentioned that you all went and did a conference somewhere where you guys presented together. I think there was a third person on housing. How is that an example of how Sustainable Connections integrates with a green civil engineer in Bellingham?
Yeah, so there's quite a few different ways that I work with Mark over the years, and some of that, so like in terms of market development, that can be really showcase and highlighting and promoting the work that he's done, both to, professional industry folks as well as the public. So, we do a lot of technical trainings and things like that where we can highlight our members in the way so that they're getting the recognition they deserve for, taking those extra steps in sustainability. If I do a technical training, I can rely on Mark and others in my network to come help teach. So whether that's within our community or, if we're going to a conference and doing something there. And then I like to be able to support my members in their creative endeavors too. So Mark is, interested in exploring urban farms and aquaculture and has a really robust sort of eco-village concept. So, where I can, I can bring in the context for our community, try and make connections for him with other folks in and outside of our community to help support the effort that he's doing. Just a lot of ways like that, bringing them on when we work with a city or port on a project, we can, share in our technical expertise through our membership. And so that's one way that we can have valuable impact and advocate for smart policy.
Yeah, it's interesting. Their 2020 urban farm project that is slated to have a Bellingham showcase almost puts some of the urban farming and aquaculture on steroids, because they're going to be growing, a lot of fish and a lot of vegetables. And I could imagine that you would be able to introduce all of that through to the food co-ops and the other people in a way that balances out all the other growers, so that everyone is sort of has an even playing field, if you will. How much do you see this becoming attractive across America in other communities? Have you been contacted by, just today, Mayor here in Houston announced a whole new program about the circular economy, about eco stuff inside the Houston and everything else like that. How do you interact with other communities, and do you have outreach to other communities with what you have done and proven so well?
Yeah, and we certainly have done a lot of that work. There's a larger sort of umbrella organization that we were really closely affiliated with, which is BALI, the Business Alliance for Local Living Economies. And so they have a lot of members, not just in United States, but across the world. And there's a lot of leadership exchange, and they have a fellowship that we have been, Derek Long, our executive director, has been part of. And that's been probably the best way that we've been able to cross promote and share what we're doing in that platform. It's hard to replicate exactly what we're doing in the sort of the robust many different program areas that we have, because we're a unique community and everybody kind of does things differently. We certainly have had our Think Local First program has been replicated across the United States. I don't know that any programs are as successful as ours because we're special and unique. And one of the things about Sustainable Connections is that we really, we only say what we're for, and we're all about promotion. And so that has been key to our success, is having a really strong communications team that can help share and highlight stories, that know how to make sure that businesses are getting the promotion and the recognition they need. That's given us, I think, a leg up.
And so when you only say what you're for, that's as opposed to like how to do it, or like
versus what you're not for. So we always try and it's not don't build to code. It's you could build to code, but here's another way to do it that we're really excited about, and here are the benefits of trying to achieve a more sustainable building.
Yeah, and then that promotion of the pulls through the message consistently, because if you highlight the people that either took the risk or were outside the box, or restaurants that went to zero waste, which is just an amazing thing. And if you really highlight them, they appreciate that. But then that also pulls through the attraction of others wanting to do the same thing and have the same moniker on the. Do you do Sustainable Connection stickers on the window type of thing, or anything like that, where they're a member?
Yeah, we sure do. And we have a variety of different ways that we promote them throughout the year, depending on the type of business. And it's always evolving and changing. You know, we're 20 years old now, and so, or almost. So we've learned a lot of lessons along the way. And, you know, part of it is just being really innovative and scrappy. You know, we started with no funding. And we're, you know, it's about pulling those things together. So even though we have this, you know, sort of large budget and a lot of employees, because we have so many different programs, we still have to be really, you know, you have to be really cautious with your funding. And so it's like thinking really critically about how you can have the best impact for the least amount of resources. And so we've really streamlined and know how to like get the job done.
Yeah, and you know, you struck me when I first met you, just listening to some of the things you were doing. I was staggered and impressed by the number of things that you are taking on and doing. And talk a little bit maybe about some of those dynamics where new ideas come in and your staff is 15, you don't want to add it to 17, so we have to divide this up and spread it out to a couple people. How has that been over the last, 8 years that you've been there?
Yeah, you know, everyone's such a team player, and we have such a strong staff that when we have innovative ideas, we have, you know, sort of a process to run them through filters and make sure we have capacity. But when there's a good idea, we make it happen. You know, for example, we have a food recovery program right now that we started just about 2 years ago. Where, you know, we realized that we had been talking to restaurants about how they could be zero waste and telling them to compost their food at the end of the night, you know, like, you know, trying to get restaurants to compost. This is like a simple, sustainable measure. But what we realized is that we were having them throw away perfectly good food. Yeah. And even though it's composted, it's not the highest and best use of perfectly good food. And so we started a program where we're now diverting that from compost and sending it to homeless shelters. And so we've developed this really robust volunteer network that does the pickups and drop-offs all over Whatcom County. And I think already this year we've, you know, saved over 50,000 pounds of food.
And you've probably enhanced, because homeless people, I mean, they dig through the garbage. So, I mean, even if it's in the garbage, they'll you know, they would eat it. And you're actually upgrading what they're getting to eat because it's just off the restaurant side. Have you seen, I don't know if you know my friend Jan Allen from Impact Bioenergy, they're taking food waste and anaerobically digesting it for its energy. How would something like that, where that's not diverting it to homeless and it's not composting, it's a third alternative to turn it into energy. Have you run across any of that in the community?
Yeah, we're really excited about that. And like Whole Foods in Bellingham has one at their grocery store, which is an awesome way to use those food scraps, those things that you know, aren't necessarily the edible foods. You know, when we get food from restaurants and from grocery stores and take it to homeless shelters, these are very nice meals. You know, this is not dumpster diving. It is like very classy. And one of the real, like, you know, what we found is that we found this new niche. Like, we were serving a completely unserved population, because a lot of people suffering homelessness don't, you know, they could go to the food bank, but how are they going to prepare those foods, you know? So having prepared meals really helps those folks that just don't have the kitchen, don't have those opportunities. And so and that program has just grown wildly. And of course, during COVID, it's become, you know, food security has become an even more important issue. So, you know, I'm glad that we started this program 2 years ago, so that coming into COVID, we were really a tight ship and had a great response to food security during that time.
Yeah, and I would imagine working remotely like you all are doing, it probably hasn't changed much for you guys, right? I mean, you've been able to continue to make your contacts, maybe less events, less maybe, but
I sure do miss, you know, we host somewhere around 300 events a year between all of our different programs. And so it's definitely a loss of that personal connection,
Sure.
Some of the networking, but it's an innovate or die time of life. And so everyone's figuring out new and creative ways to, make sure that we still have those opportunities.
It's funny how much I look forward to a Zoom call, like on the call, I don't want to do it just on the phone. I want to do it on a Zoom call because I get to see somebody. It's really funny. The other thing too is I've noticed that there's a big shift away from waste. Like nothing is waste if you learn how to beneficially reuse it or repurpose it in another way. And I think this whole discussion around food scraps and food waste and extra food, when you shift that mindset, it really opens the doors to multiple different ways to skin the cat, if you will. And I'm sure you probably find that in green building and also in energy, yes?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, in our food recovery program, one of the things we realized is that, when restaurants were now that we're tracking how much they're essentially wasting at the end of the night, a lot of them decided to shift how much they made of certain things so that they could be more efficient, right? So in one hand, unfortunately, we're not capturing that food, but we're creating more efficient businesses. And so, there are lots of co-benefits that come out of all of these, these things. We have an energy efficiency program we call a Community Energy Challenge, where we work with businesses. We go in for a very low cost, do a very robust energy audit of their business. And then we offer $1,000 worth of free direct install lighting. So essentially giving away $1,000 worth of LEDs. And then we have $5,000 worth of incentive dollars to help pay for capital projects.
Wait, so you all go do the audit, like Sustainable Connections goes and actually does the audit?
We do the audit. We have.
No, that's tremendous. And I think that probably solved, well, how are we going to get the audit done? And no one else wanted to do the audit, and you needed consistency for the baseline. So you said, you know what? Let's add 2 staff or whatever you've added to go do the audit.
Yeah, we started, it started with, we helped promote a green power challenge that Puget Sound Energy, our electric utility, had started. It's basically getting residents to add a few dollars to their bill to purchase greener electricity. And after we did this really big campaign, we ended up being the #1 green power city in the nation. And we're like, wow, this is awesome. But what we heard from some of our business members that we had been promoting this green power, they were like, well, it's great that I can buy it green, but can you help me save? What can you do there? And that's where we shifted and said, okay, well, it's great to add a few dollars and buy green power. But what we really want is everybody to reduce their energy, save the money, and be able to reinvest that into their business in different ways. And so, we're seeing huge successes through that program. And lots of other, once we have a touch point with a business, then we're able to bring in the zero waste. We're able to bring in the think local first. And so we have that opportunity to support them in a lot of different ways. Most businesses contact us and they think, oh, I want some free LED light bulbs. And next thing you know, we've got them all wrapped up into all of our stuff.
It's a gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
You just have to find that one hook to get them in. Have you been involved at all during COVID in helping all your members find new solutions to things that they had never faced before?
Oh man, we certainly have. It's been quite the year. When you have, we probably work with over 2,000 businesses a year at Sustainable Connections, and so when something like this starts to hurt our members and really the bedrock to our entire economy, we went into like action mode, particularly thinking about how farmers are going to be able to distribute their, how are they going to make their sales if people don't want to go into the restaurants, the farmers market's closed, helping them shift. And this is one of those things about COVID, in the sort of the silver linings to things, is watching all of these businesses innovate so quickly. for example, all the farmers shifting that, couldn't figure out, that didn't even have a website and couldn't figure out how to do CSAs, community supported agriculture. And within 3 weeks, those farmers that had been thinking about it for 25 years were doing it. The food co-op couldn't figure out, had talked about online ordering for years, just couldn't figure out how to make it happen. 6 weeks later, they've got a program in place. So
the pandemic. I mean, that's really
yeah. Nothing like crisis.
I call it a gift because it is literally a humanity reset button if you choose to see it as a gift. And most of us say, a gift? What are you talking about? It's a virus. No, it's giving you the opportunity to look at what you're doing, to look how you're doing it. And then I couldn't agree more. I have so many examples of people persisting. People, one of my slogans is keep going. Now it's like this. I mean, you just wake up every day and have gratitude and say, now it's like this. What am I going to do? You got to keep going. And obviously the whole podcast is follow your process. So there is a process that each one of my viewers and each one of my guests is following. And the whole thing is designed to keep having this business and life conversation about why following your process is the best thing to do, tweaking it, adjusting it, pivoting. But we've all had an opportunity to pivot on something, or 3 things or 5 things. And I think we've all discovered new parts of ourselves that we're actually capable of more than we ever imagined. And it's really, really cool. So what do you see as your challenges over the next year, 2, 3 years? Like what's in front of you that either you want to do or you don't know how you're going to get there? Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I think we have a confluence of crises right now, and whether that's climate change, our housing crisis, our health crisis, there's a confluence of these things happening all at one time. Racial equity being another really big one. That's something that we have spent the last 4 years starting to think, okay, what does it mean to have equity, diversity, inclusion within our organization? And then, what are we doing externally for that? And there is so much opportunity for growth, even as we've been sort of, forward thinking on those issues. We really, it's the urgency, I feel like, is at a different level for all of these issues. And
it's time to take action. I mean, you have to take, rather than thinking about it or talking about it, you actually have to go do a couple of them and add a couple more programs.
That's right. So, Sustainable Connections historically has been relatively apolitical. We never endorse candidates, or very, very rarely. And we endorse policies from time to time. I think what we're going to see is that there's going to be a need for more action, and that's in the policy realm, whether it's around food security, the climate crisis, all of these things that are just absolutely critical to making sure that we have that, equitable, thriving, wonderful place that, everyone loves Bellingham. I shouldn't say it out loud, but it is the most dreamy place. And we're, experiencing insane growth. One of the things that COVID has done is everyone realizes they can work from home and work from anywhere. So being, within an hour of both Vancouver, BC and Seattle, we're seeing a lot of those folks come and move into Bellingham. I welcome them with open arms and hope that we can find ways to continue to support the community that lives here now, so that my daughter can move back here and eventually afford a home. I don't know that will ever happen, but I hope so. And those are the things that I want to make sure that we have those, that clean water, clean air, and a healthy future.
So, many people that are watching or viewing are not going to move to Bellingham. I'm actually considering it. I don't know if that'll ever happen. Other things have to fall into place. And I used to live in Linden as a 8th grader, freshman and sophomore in high school. So I am familiar with the area. I've known of Bellingham for many years. But people watching from another community that's not Bellingham, but has enough inklings that they might want to do something, how would you recommend that they like what are a few things they could go do? And then also, can they reach out to you guys for sort of a blueprint or next steps on stuff? How would someone interact in their own community to recreate it under themselves, not being Bellingham, but being themselves? And then also, how do they reach out to you all for input?
Yeah, well, we're always open to talk with people that are interested in program replication. I think there's a couple things. Start small and have a clear, specific goal. When we started to redo our mission statement after we have grown so much, it was really hard to find that one thing to capture it all. And then having really strong stakeholder group and buy-in on whatever that goal is early on. Making.
I would just interrupt here, and I would encourage everyone to go to the website and go to the About Us page, because it shows a chronological history from 2002 to today of stats and things that they started, and then they connected with this stakeholder, and then they started this program, and it's a beautiful visual of that starting small and then just building block, and I think that thing will just continue. But that's actually a great visualization for my viewers that are interested in doing this in their community, to go and check that out, to then recreate that and then tell their own story in their community by starting small and getting stakeholders. And what's the best way to reach? I know on the lower thirds here, we've had your email and the website and everything else. What's the best way for someone to interact and reach out with Sustainable Connections?
Well, reaching out by email, I think, is the best, most direct way, and I'm happy to field those interest calls. But really, I encourage people to attend our events, to get to know, particularly in any program area, because like I said, we do, 300 events a year. So there is always things happening. I mean, obviously some of those have shifted in a new form, but there's so much to learn by attending and networking with the people that are doing the work here. When you find those champions, it's all about whether if you're going to start a green building program or your Think Local First or food and farming, is finding champions that you can really hold up as sort of the gold standard that people know and respect in your community. And so,
the bookstore owners in that second video you shared sound like those champions. Yeah, it's really how many businesses in Bellingham are now members of Sustainable Connections?
I don't know what our total is right now. I will say that we've, over the last few years, have recognized that there are a lot of local businesses that for various reasons access our services, but don't actually have the membership. So, like I said, we work with about 2,000 local businesses a year, and I think our membership is somewhere in the 500 to 600 range.
Wow. And then how far?
Whatcom County also.
Oh. So I have a friend that lives in Port Townsend, and I've shared a little bit of some of these things that I'm interacting with, and they were just like, man, how can we get that in Port Townsend? So how would Port Townsend, I know Impact Bioenergy is over there at Thin River Cidery. They've just placed one of their digesters there that's going to be helping them with all of their spent cider or all of the other rinds and everything else. So how would a Port Townsend over, I don't know what county that is, but it's some other county in Washington. How would they interact? I mean, because they could easily get to Bellingham in a couple hours.
Yeah, well, and we have had some really good success with Port Townsend. They've got some really innovative models that we've actually copied ourselves in the way that they've, they were lacking a general store, and they did essentially a cooperative with community members, funded a general store, because if they didn't, there was nowhere to buy their widget or the whatchamacallit. And so Port Townsend happens to be a very cool town, and if anyone there is interested, like I said, it's figuring out really what that specific goal is that you're trying to achieve, and then get a hold of us, and then we can try and work out just what kind of support that person or that project might need. Sometimes
that's where I went after Saturday's farmers market when it was raining. I loaded up a nice bag of fresh vegetables, and then I went down to the oyster farm in just south of Fairhaven, grabbed a bunch of oysters, and then hopped on a ferry and went over to Port Townsend for about 36 hours. And it was my first time there, and I can see why you like it. I mean, there was a tea and spice shop downtown that I loaded up. I got the chai tea that I got has been amazing. And but I can see why people would really enjoy Port Townsend. And they're faced with some of the same challenges at Bellingham. I mean, there's no affordable housing in Port Townsend. I think the owner of REI lives nearby. But then the workers that have to work in the stores struggle to find the right kind of affordable housing. That's the other thing I really like about the 2020 Urban Village is sort of addressing some of that affordable housing dynamic, a WeWork space. Mark has his 2020 Dockside. He's got WeWork right in his engineering office right there in Bellingham. And it's been a fantastic story. Big success for him. He's also able to give working spaces to people that are part of the cohorts that you're a part of. So it's this whole thing about thinking about villages and community. What I'm really attracted to and appreciate is that teamwork that you described and how everyone in Sustainable Connections is living community. Like you're loving, you're living, and you're local. I mean, isn't that really, isn't that, I mean, to me, those are three great things. I would sign up for that. Where can I sign up? I'll do those three things. So I can imagine you get a lot of professional and personal satisfaction. Is this what you imagined you would do with your college degree and your thought for your life? And like, how has this zoned in on that?
Well, I graduated from Huxley College for the Environment, which is a college up at Western Washington University here in Bellingham. I have my urban planning and environmental policy degree. I thought I was going to go out and save the world, working for, city government or county government. Within 2 years, I was working for a developer. Very much the exact opposite of what you thought you would be doing. And quite honestly, it was the best decision I ever made. It gave me a lot of perspective of what it takes to get projects done, really understanding what it takes to work with the county, work with the city to get things permitted, the intricacies.
It's making sausage, really. It's not as easy as it sounds or looks. I mean, it's complicated.
It is complicated, and had always had a love affair with Sustainable Connections from the onset. I had met the executive director, who's still our executive director, Derek Long, back in its infancy. And as soon as they started a green building and smart growth program, I attended every event. The developer I was working with, we sponsored everything we could. Eventually, I was asked to join their board, and I was, about 15 years younger than everyone else on the board, and just trying to hold it together and act smart. Everything that they've been doing and all of the programs, and whether they're in silos or collaborative, the energy and the effort behind it is so quality, top to bottom. And so when a job came up with the green building and smart growth manager, that was the dream job. And it was like I had met all of my professional goals at 32 or something. And now I've grown in our organization. I'm now the program director for 4 different programs, and so it's a little bit more to take on. But I appreciate everything that we're doing, and I am a 20 years into this organization or 18 years into this organization, and I still am 100% believer in everything that we're doing. And honestly, Derek Long, our executive director, provides such incredible leadership, not just for our organization, but for our community in so many different ways. The effort that we've been able to contribute during COVID, during the crisis on, all kinds of different, security task forces and all this stuff to make sure that we make it out and that our businesses are surviving. And yeah.
So, what's interesting, I've said several times, just about every episode, there's no coincidences. I actually don't think there are coincidences. And I also think that, I tell this story where if a car hits a pole at 10 miles an hour, the bumper has to dent. If the same car hits the same pole at 30, the airbags will go off. If the same car hits the same pole and the person's not wearing a seatbelt, there's going to be a really bad accident and someone probably is going to die. So it's all about all I'm describing is physics. So for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And it sounds like Sustainable Connections and your story inside of it is about the energy that you give out related to your core beliefs, your core principles, evolving as a woman, being 15 years younger on a board, and those challenges, being close to home, being local, taking that risk, not driving, going out somewhere, taking the risk to go into the developer, and it not being the ideal thing. But the energy that I picked up on you like instantly, and I consider it an honor and a privilege to be your friend, and to have you on my podcast and to now know you that I get to follow this story. And I'm gonna try to attend some of the virtual events just to learn more about it. Because in my core, I want to be a part of the story, the structures of the story you guys are telling. I want to tell that story wherever I am. So I don't have to be in Bellingham for me to be able to do that. I don't think anyone has to be in Bellingham to do it. I think what we do is we learn from those who've gone before us, and that would be you all over 18 years. And then I just really love the culture that I sense. And the culture is friendly, it's professional, it's collaborative, it's engaging. You and I have only known each other less than, a week and a half or something like that. And you during this time have gone through a spell of a sickness that had you in the hospital. Unfortunately, that's all taken care of. But that was a disruption inside of your life. But you've been you communicate. Today was a crazy day. We had to get the video over. But it's these kinds of people that I'm looking to know more of, interact with more of, contribute more to, support, learn from, all centered around the circular economy of sustainable connections, whether that's energy, whether that's zero waste, whether that's whatever it is. It's almost like I'm 54 and I've shifted for a while, but I'm really doubling down on I'm going to hit the pole at 120. Okay. I say to people, I send energy out at that speed and pace. And sometimes that's too much for people. And I learn very quickly. People pull back and I'm like, okay, I don't think I did anything. I just think maybe I made some assumptions that they were going to move as fast. And I can't thank you enough for being on the podcast, for sharing this. It will be up on my Facebook page, Follow Your Process, on live stream remotes, and hopefully we got it over to yours. We'll send you the link. I'd encourage you to post it on LinkedIn and everywhere else. But now the Rose Lathrop story is on Follow Your Process podcast. This is only episode number 7. And it's an honor to have you on my podcast. And I thank you for sharing everything. Is there any closing comments you might want to say to my guests as we close out here?
I guess the only thing I want to say is, and building off what you were talking about, is the love that you give is the love that you get. And, everyone has a passion, and to really follow that passion, because once you do, it's amazing the doors that will open, and hope that everyone just continues to follow their path and their passion.
Well, and I couldn't agree more. But I would also add to that, you must love yourself first. So the love you give to yourself is only the love that you can give to another. And that is a deep, difficult thing sometimes. But it's actually kind of simple. You just love yourself every day, no matter what you did or how you did it. And then you wake up the next day and now it's like this, and you just keep following your process, and you keep going. Rose, thank you so much. And
thank you.
Looks like a beautiful evening there in Bellingham. Doesn't look like it's raining. Enjoy your evening, and
thank you. I will.
I'll be in touch soon when something comes up.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.